So today we are going to continue with chapter 15. Mukta's here. Hi Mukta,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good.
Good, nice. So Sanjay said he'll join soon, a little late, so we
Yeah,
can get started.
yeah.
Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay. So we are on chapter 15. And I've been telling you chapter 15 is a very sort of a special chapter because it has condensed a lot of what Gita has to say in one chapter. In fact, I was reading somewhere that it's Shankar even calls it a shastra by itself. Just this chapter itself is a shastra because it kind of gives the complete teaching. So, what have we seen so far? What are the different topics that we've seen already? And what are we going to do today? So, if you see, this is a list of everything, all the shloks. There are only 20 shloks in the 15th chapter, but you can see what all it covers. The first four shloks we saw, we heard about the tree of Samsāra, the Ashvattha tree, and how a pretty detailed picture of how it creates bondage. How over time branches or shoots from the tree, go down to the ground and become new. They take on new roots and they become like the original stem. In fact, after some time, it's impossible to tell which is the original stem and which is what has come later. So it's kind of like samsara. It can bind you in many many different ways. And the leaves are like Veda because the Veda nourishes the samsara, just like the leaves nourish the tree. Veda nourishes in the sense that Veda tells you about karmas and how what karmas to do and what do you get as a result of the karmas, and the karmas bind you actually. So in a way, Veda binds you. It's just that Veda doesn't, it tells you at least what is dharmic and what is not dharmic. So from that sense, Veda is very useful, but Veda is also something that binds you. The end of the Veda, though, the Vedanta, is what gives you, which tells you the way on how to get out of this tree of samsara, which is through dispassion and through knowledge. So, with the acts of dispassion, you cut the tree, and with the knowledge, you remove the roots from the ground. So, you're going to get rid of it for good. So, we saw all that plus some other stuff. This was the first four verses. Then, in the fifth verse, he talks about qualifications for knowledge. Again, he emphasized here vairagya, but of course, vairagya is not the only qualification. So if you look at the chatuṣṣati sampatti, it's vairagya, viveka, and mumukṣutvam and the shat sampatti. So all that we discussed. Then sixth verse talks about ātman and cognition. And we talked about how vṛttis are formed, what cognition actually means in Vedanta, and who is the seer, what is seen, you know, Satyam Mithya, all of that we brought in here. And then we talked about that a little bit more when he talked about Jiva being an amsha of of Ishwar. And we talked about how this line has created different philosophies. If you think about Jiva literally as an amsha of Ishwar, you're talking Viśiṣṭādvaita. But that's not the way we consider it. It is not a literally, it's a seemingly an amsha, a part of Ishwar. And that's where you need Satyam and Mithya. So you can't understand Advait without understanding Satyam and Mithya because it's impossible to describe then how unity becomes diversity, how one becomes so many if we don't understand Satyam Mithya. So we talked about all of that here. Then 8 to 11, he talks about Utkarma, which is something Gita talked about a lot more in chapter 8, which is what happens when the jiva departs from the body at the time of death, and how the different sense organs fold into themselves, fold into the heart, and then the jiva departs and departs from either the path of the sun or the path of the moon. How, depending upon what karmas you've done, your departure will take place. You will be going to different worlds depending upon your karmas and things like that. Then it talks 12 to 15, it talks about Ishwar. This was our last lecture. We talked about what Ishwar is. And here, although there are many different aspects or different ways in which we can look at Ishwar, what we looked at last time was Ishwar as intelligence, the intelligence which is immanent in this world, and also immanent in us. But it's more importantly, it's not just in living beings; it's everywhere. And now, finally, he comes to why the chapter is called Purushottam Yoga. He talks about the Shara and the Akshara Purusha and Purushottam, and we are going to cover that today, and then the benefits and value of self-knowledge. So if we have time, we can cover both. If not, we will at least cover Kshara and Akshara Purusha. Okay? So you can see 20 verses, but a lot of different topics. And obviously, the topics were only touched upon because they've all been elaborated in other parts of the Gita. So they just wanted, in this chapter, Bhagavan Krishna is just reminding Arjun of all he has talked about so far in the first 14 chapters, and then bringing in Kshara and Akshara as a new topic. Um, in chapter 9, if you remember, we talked about Para and Apara. Actually, chapter 9 and chapter 7, both of them talked about it. So that was one way of looking at knowledge, Para and Apara. But now he's talking about Kshara and Akshara. So what is this Kshara and Akshara? So what I'm just going to talk for like a few minutes about this, and then we'll leave it open. Whatever questions you have on this or stuff that we've covered before, please feel free. And I know Akila, you joined late, and I'm not sure how much of this, this could be different from what you've been taught. So you can just, we can talk about it more. So, so let me take you through the 3-4 verses I was planning for today. So this is where we are. We'd finished up till 15 last time. And what we are talking about now is Shara and Akshara. So I'm going to take you through the Sanskrit. It's only 3 verses. Okay, 4. And then we'll go through the translation. So he says, Dvau imau. It's a sandhi, so it becomes Dvam imau. Dvau imau purushau. Loke, that means these two purushas in this world. Ksharaha Aksharaha cha. Sharaha cha Aksharaha. So these two, Sharaha and Akshara, evacha. So there are two different Purushas he's introducing in this world. The Kshara Purusha and the Akshara Purusha. And we'll understand what this means, what Kshara means, what Akshara means, and what Purusha means. Okay. He says, Ksharaha Sarvani Bhutani. That means the Sharaha Purusha is everything that you see in this world, all living and non-living things, all the elements, everything is Kshara Purusha. Sarvani Bhutani. Nothing is left. And Kutasthaha Aksharaha Uchyate. So that means Aksharaha, which is the other Purusha, is the Kutasthaha Purusha. The Kutasthaha stuff is called Aksharaha. So by Kutasthaha, he means that which does not change. Kutastha actually means an anvil. The an anvil is something, if you see a blacksmith or something, they have an anvil on which they keep the hot metal which has to be formed, and then they hit it. So the anvil is the support, but nothing happens to the anvil. You can form, because the anvil stays exactly changeless. That is why you can change what's on top by hitting it, right? You can create different forms. That's how a blacksmith uses it. So that's an anvil. So he's calling the Akshara Purusha like an anvil. Now, Shankar tells us here that typically the Kutastha word is used not for Purusha, it's used for Atma. That's the Adhar of everything. But in this particular case, Kutastha has been used to talk about Akshara, and he will explain why. Okay, so let's move on. Then he says, Uttama Purushaha tu Anyaha. Indeed, Uttama Purusha. Tu means whereas. Uttama Purusha is Anya, is different. Paramatma iti. Sorry, Sanjay, the entry. Hi, Sanjay. So let's continue. So Paramatma iti, right? Udaharitaha. So this Uttam Purusha is called or known as Paramatma. Yah Lokatraya Avishya Vibharti Avyaya Ishvaraha. So that means this, the one that enters into these three lokas. The three lokas are Bhur, Bhuvaha, and Swaha. Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. Bhu means all the lokas, which are seven lokas below the Prithvi. Bhuva is the middle layer, which is Prithvi and a couple other lokas. And then the four lokas above are called Swaha. So there are 14 lokas in all. So he's saying that this Ishwar enters all the 14 lokas and is the Vibharti. Vibhartya means it has provided support. It's the thing that sustains these worlds. That is the Uttama Purusha. And don't worry, we are going to just going through this. We'll explain all of this, okay? Then he says, Yasmat Ksharam Atitaha Aham Ksharat Api Cha Uttamaha Ataha Asmi Loke Vede Cha Prathitaha Purushottam. So he's saying, like, because of the fact that I can cross Kshara. Actually, maybe before we get into this, let me just give you, because it's becoming too complicated otherwise, I'll tell you what now he means by Kshara and Akshara. We'll come back to this. So I'm going to try to stop sharing. Okay. So just these two, let's talk about this. So what he's trying to say is that everything which is in this world that you can see, living, non-living, it's called Kshara. Kshara means that which is not permanent, that which is subject to destruction. So here I have to tell you, Kshara, actually the dhatu, the Sanskrit dhatu is Kshar. And Kshar means that which flows and dissolves. It flows and dissolves, is impermanent. It's constantly changing, it's morphing one to another. That's called Kshara. So he describes the world as constantly morphing. It's constantly coming and going. One form is changing into another form, right? So that's why it's called Kshara. Akshara means that does not morph, which is the opposite of Shara. Akshara means it doesn't change. So he breaks up Maya into two. He says there is a manifest Maya, which is what we see all around us. That's called Kshara, because that's up and down, changing, evolving. But there's an unmanifest Maya also, which is called Akshara, the Akshara Purusha. Unmanifest Maya means the causal Maya. So just to give you an example, if you look at your own self, right, you have a subtle body and a physical body. Those are manifest Maya. You see things around you, you can perceive, both in the physical world, on the waking state, and in the dream state, right? So that's Shara. And those things that you perceive are always changing. But then you can go back to sleep. And what is then evidence is your causal body. It's not that you become Brahman or you merged into Brahman, so to say, when you're going to sleep. You're still the same individual, because then you wake up and you're the same individual. But the world that you have seen in your waking state and in your dream state has become unmanifest. That's what has happened. So the Purusha that you become when you are sleeping is Akshara. You don't notice any change in deep sleep. You don't notice any movement. You don't notice the passage of time. You don't notice space. None of these things exist. If I ask you when you were in deep sleep, how big was the space in which you were? There's no conception of space. Or if I ask you, can you tell me when did you exactly go into deep sleep and when did you get out? How long did you spend in deep sleep? I mean, in waking state, you can say, okay, I remember, okay, at this time I saw this, and then this event happened here, and this much time elapsed. But in dreams, in deep sleep, there is no such conception. Even in dream, there's a conception. Could be a wrong conception. In dream, you could dream basically, literally, when we dream at a time, they say we dream only for like 2 or 3 minutes. That's all we dream. But it seems to us as if we have dreamt like a huge thing. Oh, so much has happened. That's because our concept of time is completely, it's really different in dream. Time slows down, you could say. A lot happens in a very short time. And it seems like, it seems in a dream you can grow from childhood to an adult. You can have years have passed, and actually the dream only lasted a minute and a half. But still, may not be an accurate conception of time, but there is a conception of time. You have a sense of time. You have a sense of events. You have a sense of space. You have a sense of change. That's Ashara. Just like in the waking state, you have a sense of time, you have a sense of space, you have a sense of events, you have a sense of change. Again, Shara. But in deep sleep, there is no such feeling. That's why actually we enjoy deep sleep so much. Because we are gone. Our ego is gone. Our ego itself is unmanifest. So the seer itself is unmanifest. The knower itself is unmanifest. Forget about the world. Forget about the known. The knower itself is unmanifest. Everything is unmanifest. So the knower, the world which is known, the seer, the world that is seen, the experiencer, the world that is experienced, these are they only occur in waking and dream state. They only occur when when Maya is manifest. That means in um, in Shara Purusha, as a Shara Purusha. Now, of course, the dream is just an example. So you personally may be unmanifest, right? But the world is still manifest around you, even when you're dreaming or even when you're in deep sleep. That's fine. That's just an example. But just like you keep coming in and going in and out of your causal body, of your causal state. You keep getting into waking and then you go back to dream and then you go into sleep. So basically, sleep unmanifest, waking and dream manifest. You keep going back, manifest and manifest, manifest and manifest. Every day the cycle repeats. And if you love to sleep, it can happen more than once a day. Similarly, the world too is going through the same cycles. And right now we are seeing the world existing. We are seeing everything manifest. That's what we are seeing as of now. But what Krishna Bhagavan is telling Arjun is that their time will come when it will become unmanifest. When this Kshara Purusha, which is in this particular case he calls Purusha as the world, this Kshara Purusha also will become unmanifest and will get back into its own, the world's causal body. The causal body of the world, you remember there were these, like there's a parallel between the causal body of the individual and the world and the subtle body of the individual and the subtle body of the world. We talked about it, Hiranyagarbha, Ishwar, and Virat. So when the world goes back into its own causal body, then then what is evident is the Kshara Purusha. And that Kshara Purusha, one sec, is what will never change. Okay? But then this was his first verse. He described what is a Kshara Purusha, right? And what's a Akshara Purusha. He called Akshara Purusha as Kutastha. That means it doesn't change. Now he also said in the next verse that there is a Uttam Purusha. Purushottam just means Uttam Purusha. The Kshara Purusha, Akshara Purusha, and then an Uttam Purusha, which is on top of both of them. He says this Uttam Purusha is Anya, is different from both of these Purushas, and is the Adhar of both the Purushas. And he says it's called Paramatma. Paramatma iti uchyate. That means it's known as Paramatma. So when we say Paramatma, we are not talking about either the Shara Purusha or the Akshara Purusha. We are not talking about either of the two aspects of Maya, the manifest or the unmanifest. We are saying Paramatma is Brahman, is that which supports Maya as a whole, both manifest and unmanifest. Okay? So I think the reason why this is important is because sometimes we feel that that if the world is not, if it's not manifested, it goes into unmanifest state, and the unmanifest state is Brahman. That is what he's clarifying. He's saying, no, that is not the case. The unmanifest state is not Brahman. The unmanifest state is still Maya, because knowledge always exists. Maya never goes away. So it's not as if there's Brahman and suddenly Maya appears, and when Maya appears, the world appears, and then when the Maya is gone, then the Brahman remains. No, there is nothing called Brahman by itself. That's just a notion. So to say that there is something called, um, nirguna Brahman, that means without any guna, that that is if you look at it from our perspective, from one perspective, it can never happen because there will always be Maya. Either the Maya will be in manifest state or unmanifest state, either as a Shara Purusha or a Akshara Purusha. It will always be there. But look at it from the standpoint of Brahman, then all there is Nirguna Brahman. Maya never even existed. It's as if it's not there. All there is, because what you're looking at is what is actually there. What's actually there is only Nirguna Brahman. So you can decide either way, which way you want to look at it, which way you're looking at it, either as from the standpoint of Brahman, in which case all there is Brahman, or from the standpoint of Maya, in which case the Maya is permanent. It never goes away. It can only just get unmanifest and manifest. Just like a human being sleeps and gets up, sleeps and gets up. So when you're sleeping, you're unmanifest. That's all. So that's what it's trying to clarify. It's trying to clarify that the manifestation and the unmanifestation happens within Maya itself, of the Maya itself. And the thing which supports both is Brahman. Okay, and he calls that Brahman Uttam Purusha, or in other words, Purushottam. And he just, instead of saying Uttam Purusha, he's saying Purusha Uttam, which as you apply the Sandhi, it becomes Purushottam. Okay, that's what he's saying. Let me see if we can continue with the other two, and then we will talk, because I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. It's not so
Dheeraj,
easy.
I have a question. I don't know. You want me to wait or?
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
So I'm just trying to correlate what you just said with our past learning, right?
Right,
So, in terms of manifestations, when we talked about the different states, so there is the waking states, sleeping state, deep sleep,
right.
and then we also have the fourth, right? So I guess I'm just trying to correlate what we just learned. The fourth is still there, right? I mean, as a human being, right? And but this part of the lesson is sort of focused on the first three states,
Right. So the
correct?
fourth is always there. The fourth is never gone. It's not a different. So what he was trying to say was in that when we looked at the three states and the fourth state being Turiya,
Yeah.
or Atma, or whatever you want to call it, when there is a difference between the first three states and the fourth state. In the first three states, one of them exists at any given time. Either you're in the waking state. To go from waking state to sleep to dreaming state, waking state has to go, then you move into the dream state.
Mhm.
And to go from dream to deep sleep, the dream has to go, then you go to deep sleep.
Mhm.
At any given time, you're going to be in one of these three
One of the
states.
states, yeah.
But Turiya is not like that. It's not as if you can go from these three states and suddenly decide, I will go into deep samadhi and now I will enter Turiya. That's not the case.
Mhm.
Turiya is not an exclusive state which is not existing when the three are there. Turiya underlies all three.
Yeah. Okay.
You're always in Turiya. Whether you're in the waking state, whether you're in the dreaming state, whether you're in the deep sleep state, Turiya always is because these states exist. the existence of these states is there because of Turiya, because of Atma.
Yeah. These
So
are
a lot of
superimposed
people have
onto
this
it.
wrong notion that we will kind of, enter Atma by negating these three states. That is nonsense. And this is what this is also trying to say. These three states cannot be negated.
Mhm.
You cannot say that I will negate Maya. At best, you can say I will go from manifest to unmanifest, unmanifest back to manifest. This is Shankar's point and Krishna Bhagwan's point. Because Maya, if you're looking at it from the standpoint of Maya, Maya always exists. You can never have a situation where there's no Maya. It will either happen it will either exist as unmanifest or as manifest. And to your point, the first two states, waking and dreaming, can be thought of as manifest states. So they are kshara. You're a kshara purusha as a limited being in that state. The causal state, which is the deep sleep state, is akshara because there's no perception of any change in that state. It's a changeless state. Right? When you're deep sleep, like I was telling you, there's no space, no time, no change, nothing. You're just there. And then you get out of it. And then you're back again in this world. So Kshara and Akshara is all this play into these three states. But if you want to say what is Purushottama, Purushottama is the Atma, is the Turiya,
Yeah.
which is the fourth state, which is always there. The other three states cannot exist without this fourth state.
Mhm.
So it can be confusing to say that there are four legs. He says there are four legs in Mandukya Upanishad. That can be very confusing. It's actually three legs, and the fourth leg is kind of a platform on which all the three other legs remain. So that's how we have to understand it. But here he's just trying to clarify. He's trying to reinforce this fact that that you can say that things go into manifestation and come out of manifestation, but you can never say that Purushottama doesn't exist. Purushottama is always there. He calls this Purushottam, this fourth state. He calls it Purushottam, the Uttam Purusha, the Ishwar, if you want to say that. Me, like Krishna Bhagavan says, me, it's me. I am the Adhar. I'm Ishwar. So that's what he's trying to say. And this is how this chapter is trying to say the same thing in a slightly. When it talks about samsara, it was bringing a different angle into samsara, saying the same thing, but now giving the analogy of a tree. And now he's saying the same thing as what we've talked about before, the three states, but bringing the analogy of kshara and akshara and purushottama, just to drive home this point that don't start thinking that akshara or unmanifest state is Brahman.
So I also had a quick clarification. Should I wait until you're done with?
It's
Okay.
okay, yeah.
So you said that there is no time when the akshara or the causal state of Maya, the unmanifest, Maya is there either manifest or unmanifest.
Right.
From the maybe you meant from the Vyaparika, I don't know the words you used, but then you said from when you were saying that there is no nirgun Brahman by itself, except if you look at it from the viewpoint of if you talk as Brahman,
Right.
then there is only nirgun Brahman.
Correct.
There is no Maya.
Yeah, right.
But actually, those words, do they mean anything to say when you talk from the viewpoint of Brahman? There's nothing there, right? There's nothing to talk about, there's nothing to explain, there's nothing, right? Like, I'm just trying to understand what does that actually mean?
Actually, this confused me also. This, what Vidhi is saying, I also got a little confused here.
I mean, from the viewpoint of
Like, I can ask you this question that what you say that let's take any object in front of you. You say that the object exists. Let's say you have a pen in front of you. You say the pen exists, or this glass mukta you're drinking from. This glass exists. But my question to you is, does the glass really exist? You can say, no, it's not the glass. You remember we went through this exercise?
Yeah.
It's not the glass, it's molecules, and that is also not there. So everything else is a form. What really exists is just Brahman. Everything else is a form. So you can very well say nothing exists. if you really truly want to understand what existence is, and you want to truly say, does anything really exist? You say, no, nothing exists.
So is
All
that
of
the
this is non-existent.
so that's the same as saying Maya doesn't exist.
Yeah, of course. It's the same as saying Maya doesn't exist. So that's what I'm saying. That is the standpoint of a Brahman standpoint. You look at it like that, you can say you're now looking at everything from the standpoint of Brahman, which means you're saying the existence really means that which truly exists, which is Brahman. So if you're looking at existence from that perspective, then nothing exists. It's a different, like you said, you remember there's a different levels of reality.
Yeah.
So Brahman is Paramatmika. So from that perspective, nothing exists.
When you define existence like that, but then we also just said that Maya always exists. So
Right. But now if
what
you
you
don't
mean
if you
is,
don't define existence like that, and you say this world around me is manifested, it exists as a manifest form. It's manifested. Then you can say, or me, the waking state, like it's I see things around me. They're manifest things. You can say those become unmanifest when I go to sleep. Or when pralaya happens, the world becomes unmanifest. Right? Then you are not saying, then you're defining existence as manifestation. Then you can say, yeah, then Maya exists. There's Maya, which is causing this world, and Maya is existent, and Maya never goes away. Because from that perspective, Maya has, if you say the world exists as manifest, then when it gets unmanifest, it still exists. It exists as Maya. So from that perspective, Maya never goes away. Just all you can see is cycles of manifestation and unmanifestation. There's also Brahman. I'm not saying there's no Brahman. You're saying Brahman is the support of all that. But from your perspective, then Maya exists in either manifested or unmanifested form. So that's what it means. Depends on how you are going to define existence, how you,
yeah,
what is your point that you're trying to make, what you're trying to put across.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, from when you say, from the viewpoint of Brahman, from the viewpoint of Brahman, there's nothing, there's no me, or there's no explanation, there's no
It's not
question.
from yeah. So that again, so from the like I was saying, from the viewpoint of Brahman means if you define existence as how you define existence, that's what it means.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I mean, you can Deepraj, Akhila, any you can ask, let's not wait till the end because otherwise the next two verses
Yeah,
you will definitely not understand. They're more complicated.
yeah, I have a more basic question.
Yes,
When we
good. I'm
talk
glad.
about Purushas here,
Yes.
we are contrasting that with we are talking about the Prakriti Purusha. That is
No.
no.
But we continue with your
What's the
question.
what's the difference here? I mean, I'm trying to figure because in my mind, there is Prakriti and Purusha. That's the way I understand it. So here, when we talk about Purusha, what is the sense in which we are talking about?
Okay, so good. Glad you asked. So when you say Purusha versus Prakriti, you're talking Sankhya. Okay? So the different terms in different philosophies mean different things. So in Sankhya, what we call ātma, they call it Purusha. And we say ātma is all there is. There is no Prakriti. Prakriti we call Maya. What they call Prakriti, we call Maya as Vedānta. So for Sankhya, the two things independently exist, Purusha and Prakriti. For them, Purusha never becomes Prakriti. Purusha is just the consciousness. Prakriti exists in its own right. They are equal, co-equal partners, Prakriti and Purusha. Prakriti is dead. It's like not alive. It's Jada. And when Atma and Prakriti come together, then Atma brings life into Prakriti. See, this is what, if you read Gita, this shloka I just read to you, it says the same thing. Krishna Bhagwan is saying, I enter the worlds, right? Now, if you take this meaning literally, I enter the world, that means there's a world which is existent and Atma has entered the world. And this statement, Sankhya will take and say, look, look what Gita is saying. Gita supports me. Just like in Viśiṣṭādvaita, I told you about the ansha when Gita says ansha, right? So this is the kind of a, I mean, this is a side comment, but this is the beauty of Gita. It has, it can, anybody who has any belief can go to Gita and say, yeah, Gita is mine. It supports me. Because you have different, in Gita, you have all these different things, different passages, different statements, which can be looked at from multiple ways. If you look at them directly, word by word, they'll say one thing. If you look at it with mimamsa, meaning in other words, you try to reconcile what this statement is saying with another statement which is saying somewhere else, and then say what has to be the common denominator for them both to be correct, then it will talk to Vedanta. That's the difference. So, okay, but back to your point. So that's what Sankhya says, that there is a Purusha, a separate Purusha. It's just a consciousness principle is called Purusha. And the material principle, right, from which all material is created is called Prakriti. And these two principles exist. That's what Purusha is. When we say Purusha, when Vedanta says Purusha, it means Atma, absolutely. But it, depending on, what level of Purusha you're talking, but that Purusha is the Adhar for everything, material, non-material, etc. So he's clarifying this by saying there is a Purusha, and that is the Adhar, which you can call Atma. And he's also calling Maya as another Purusha. He's calling Maya as the Kshara Purusha. Correct? Kshara Purusha is nothing but Maya. And he calls it Kshara Purusha, meaning it's that aspect of Purusha which is constantly dissolving, constantly changing, constantly perishing. So he calls that. So there's a difference between Purusha as a, you have to be very careful what, these are technical terms, so you got to be careful what philosophy you are referring to when you're talking about these statements. Now it's very interesting. I'll tell you some very interesting stuff here. Kshara is from the root called shar. It's a shar dhatu in Sanskrit. It means impermanence, but impermanence of the type which is flowing. It's like dissolving. You can imagine things morphing. When you look at the world as a whole, big picture from a distance, you'll see over time world evolves. Things move, stars become white dwarfs, and white dwarfs become something else. Things evolve. Dust gathers together, becomes a star. There's a motion, there's like a flowing motion, right? So that's why it's called Akshara. But there's also something called Sharira, which is our Sharir. Sharir also means that which gets destroyed, just like Shara. But it's from a dhatu called Shru dhatu. And Shru dhatu means destruction through breakdown, through collapse. Like destruction, like if you smash a piece of glass, it shatters into little pieces. So that kind of a destruction is called Shru dhatu. So Sharir, now when you're looking at Sharir, you're looking at micro, you're looking very, close. The same change which appears as moving, dissolving, flowing, appears as violent when you look up close. This sharir, when we die, it dissolves, it shatters, it breaks up into little bits and pieces. It's a more violent sort of a association. So I mean, I found it very interesting because it's the same thing, but the usage of the terms is such that it conveys the meaning. And Purusha comes from the dhatu called Pru dhatu, which is the same as Purna, which Purna comes from. Purna means complete, full. So Purusha is that which fills the Sharir. That's called Purusha. So Purusha, you can think about it in two ways. You can think about it as a person. So in the case of a person, we have a Sharir, and the Purusha fills the Sharir. That's my Purusha. That's what you could call, the pratibimb, or reflected self, or these things. And you can also think about Purusha as that which fills the cosmos. So when you think about Atma or Brahman, it fills the cosmos. It's like, it's Purusha, it's Purna. So that is how Vedanta sees it. From a Vedanta perspective, that's what Purusha means. Now, if you ask the Sankhya guys, they will give you a different etymology of Purusha. They'll say, no, Purusha actually comes from this dhatu, and this is what it means. The people are just making it up. For whatever is convenient to their cause, they kind of focus on that. So anyway, where did I answer the questions? I think I got lost in my own thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let me just share and finish the next two, and then we can talk more. Then he's saying, because I am beyond the perishable and above the imperishable too. That means yasmat, because sharam atitah aham, sharat api cha uttama. So because I am atita. Atita means beyond, above. The sharam, aham, sharat api, and also the aksharat, right? Cha uttama. Therefore, it's yasmat aksharam atitaha aham sharat apicha. Therefore, uttama. That means I'm above all of them. Ataha asmi loke vede cha pratitaha purushottamaha. So that means therefore, ataha means therefore, uh, loke, in this world and in the Vedas, right? I am well known as Purushottama. So he's just saying, why am I called Purushottama? So if you in the Vedas too, he is referred to as Purushottam. In the world too, God is referred to as Purushottam, and he is referred to as Purushottam because he is Uttam. That means, like he said here, Cha Uttama. Because he's Uttam, meaning he's Uttam, he's above both Shara and Akshara. That is why he's called Purushottam. That's what he's trying to say. So he's re-emphasizing the point that he is above Maya as a whole, both the manifest and the unmanifest. That's what he's trying to say here. Okay? And this was we can talk about the other two also. Let's just finish it. He says, the one who is not deluded. So, yaha, right? Mam eva asamudha. Mam evam asamudha. Asamudha means that who is not deluded. Samudha means mudha, like a deluded person, a fool. Right? Janati Purushottamam. Knows Purushottam. That person who knows me as such gains me. Bhajati means he gains me. Correct? So he's trying to say that what does it mean to have moksha? What does it mean to be a jnani? It means understanding this, or knowing this, not just understanding, knowing this, that there is a Purushottama, which is Brahman, which is another way of saying knowing Brahman. So knowing Purushottama means knowing Brahman. So he says, anyone who knows me as such, as completely removed from Shara and Akshara, that person finds me, attains me. That means he has got moksha. Now again here, the language. He says attains me. That means there are a whole bunch of philosophies which exist in India today, which say our mission is to unite with God, to attain God. Most of the bhakti people say that, right? But that's not, and they will point to a verse like this and say, see, this is what it's saying. It's saying, he will attain me. So if I don't understand Purushottama, I have not attained Ishwar. So till I understand Purushottama, I have not attained Ishwar. That is not correct from a Vedanta perspective. Vedanta will look at this and say, this is as if you will attain. Because really speaking, Ishwar is always, you are always Ishwar. It's not that you have to become Ishwar. You just don't know it. Right? That's the difference. But in this verse, what he's trying to say is that I am different. Know me as such, meaning know me as different from Shara and Akshara. That means the Shara and Akshara do not affect me. It doesn't matter whether I'm a Sangha. You must have heard of this term. That means whether the world is going through turmoil, whether you're going through turmoil, whether it is pap, whether it is pun, whether it is good, bad, dirty, filthy, pure, impure, nothing will touch me. All of these things, these qualifications or these properties, they're all part and parcel of Maya. They all happen within Maya. I support them and I'm also removed from them. I am constantly featureless. So I have no gunas at all. I'm nirgun. So I'm neither good nor bad, neither pure nor impure, neither happy nor unhappy. I am just me and asankha. All these qualities that we are talking about, good, bad, and all that, they are in the realm of Maya alone. So if you know this, you understand this, you understand that that is your true nature. Your true nature is beyond all these good and bad qualities. Then you have achieved me. Then then that is moksha. That is the definition of moksha. Okay, let's discuss. I mean, any other questions or thoughts? Because there's a lot. Let's see what the last one is. Okay, let's quickly do the last one also, because then we'll be done with chapter 15. Sorry. It says Bharata Anagha. Anagha is another name, the sinless one of Arjun. This most profound teaching has thus been said by me. Knowing this, a person becomes wise, one who has buddhi, that's buddhiman, and who has accomplished all that has to be accomplished. So the Sanskrit here is very nice. So iti guhyatamam. Guhyatamam means the most profound, the most secret and the most profound. Guhya means like a gufa, right? Like a cave. So guhyatamam is the most profound and secret shastram. Iti guhyatamam shastram, right? Idam uktam mayanakaha. This is what I am talking about. This is how it is called. This is what it's said. Etat buddhava, that means having known this, buddhiman syat. That person who has known this will be known as buddhiman, will be called buddhiman. Krit krityashah bharataha. So kritya means that which should be done. Krit means that which has been done. So that means this person has done what needs to be done. There's nothing more to be accomplished. If you understand this properly, you understand this fully and internalize it and see yourself as that Purushottam. You see yourself as that Purushottam, see yourself as not being affected by all the gunas of the world. See yourself beyond papa and punya, see yourself beyond good and bad and evil and everything. Then you have done what needs to be done in this world. There's nothing more to be accomplished. This is your goal. This is moksha. That's what he's saying. Okay?
Just also in the Sanskrit, I think, is the anvil kutastha or kutastha?
Kutastha.
Kutastha.
But kuta has many different meanings. That's the other thing. So we are just going by what Shankar describes.
I see.
Shankar chooses what he wants to choose
Yeah.
to make his point. Okay. So he says when kutastha is defined to show ātma, then he uses it as an anvil. But kuta also has a meaning called deceit. So when he's going to talk about Maya, he says it's like deceit. Kuta is like that which deceives you. Maya deceives you, you know. So that's how he describes it.
And you were
You're
saying,
on mute.
you were saying how its Gita is so amazing because it can give meaning to whoever is seeking meaning in diverse ways. But that's just language, right? It's not just Gita, right? I mean, that's language.
Right.
Can do that, yeah.
What's the meaning of the lines written at the bottom after
yeah.
the 20th shlok?
Yeah. It's actually they're written at the end of every chapter. Let me show you.
Acha. Okay.
Okay. And actually it's very interesting. I'm glad you asked because it will clarify certain things. It will tell you what Gita actually means. This is very, very supportive of Vedanta. It says, Tat Sat. Tat Sat, Om Tat Sat. This is Sat. Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita's Upanishadsu. Gitasu, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su, Upanishadsu. That means he is calling Gita as an Upanishad. Gita itself calls itself as an Upanishad.
Mhm.
Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. So there it's talking about two things. It's saying Gita is a combination of Brahma Vidya, which is basically Vedanta. Vedanta is all about Brahma Vidya. Because Brahma is only defined in Vedanta. No other philosophy talks about Brahman. Like Sankhya doesn't talk about Brahman. Nyaya doesn't talk about Brahman. So Brahman means Vedanta. In fact, that is the real purpose of Vedanta. If you ask anybody, any scholar, what is the specialty of Vedanta? It is Vedanta is a pramana for Brahman. It points to Brahman. It's the only philosophy that does that. So Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastra, and it says it's also Yoga Shastra. And you'll see a lot of Yoga Shastra in Gita. He talks about in Yoga Shastra, they talk about the eight Ashtanga Yoga, the eight, from dharana and, shama, dama, dharana, samadhi, blah, 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 right? So that is not Vedanta. That is Yoga Shastra. And Gita blends the two together. It brings in Vedanta and brings in Yoga Shastra, is what this is saying. Shri Krishna Arjun Samvade. So it's a samvad between Shri Krishna and Arjuna. And by the way, samvad is also a technical term. Samvad doesn't just mean a conversation, because you can have multiple kinds of vadas. Vad means a good conversation. You can have samvad, you can have vivad, you can have different ways of communicating. You can have arguments, you can have debates. Samvad means a particular kind of collaboration where one person is teaching another person and the other person is listening with shraddha to that person. That's what samvad means. So it's samvade. Then Purushottam Yogo Nama Panchadashaha Adhyaya. So now, अभी यहाँ तक it's common. Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishad Su Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjun Samvade. This is common for all chapters. This chapter he's added Purushottama Yoga Nama Panchadashaha Adhyaya. That means this particular chapter is called Purushottam Nama and it's the 15th chapter. So Purushottam Yoga is the name of the title of this chapter. The first chapter would be Arjun Vishad Yoga Nama Prathamaha Adhyaya. Right? And the
Are
second
it
would be,
literally part of the Gita or
it's part of the Gita. I don't know when it was. Gita also, by the way, it's not as if Gita was written once and no change. Over the centuries, it's all an oral thing, right? So in the beginning, it was all oral. So over time, things have been morphed in, added to Gita. So these chapters may not be exactly the same place they were broken. There are two versions of Gita even today. One has 700 verses, one has 701 verses. So one verse was added later. So there are all these people who've done this research. They've gone through the language and they've said, there are parts of the Gita which were new, which were original. There are parts which have been added. Some people say that Gita wasn't even part of Mahabharata originally. It has been added later because the language is different.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, don't have that knowledge of the language. But people who have, they've looked at it and said, okay, the way that it is said is different. The words usage, the language usage is different. So, but as of right now, this is part of Gita. I don't know when it became part of Gita.
Like we have Gita by different groups of philosophies. But the interpretations might be different. I can understand that by different individuals. But the shlokas would be the same.
Absolutely the same.
Absolutely the same in all the Gitas,
Absolutely. Whatever exists today. Well, except there's one shlok.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Shlok is the same. But the interpretations are all different. So like I told you, right? I showed you this shloka. See, I hear this one. There's just one. There are so many like this. This one says,
that sixth one, 15 ka sixth where that the ansh of
No, वो तो था ही. No, I'm saying even here, this one,
yeah,
right? This, which I've highlighted, 17.
yeah,
It
yeah.
says Lokatrayam Avishya. That
Mhm,
means having entered the three lokas.
mhm.
Ishvaraha. So Ishvaraha has the one who's entered the three lokas. So when you say has entered the three lokas, that means the three lokas existed separately, and then Ishwar exists separately, or Atma exists separately, and the Atma entered the three lokas.
Yes.
That is totally Sankhya. So Sankhya will say, yeah, this is totally, Sankhya will disregard the shloks which support Vedanta and say they
Yeah.
are Arthvada. That means they are said for effect.
Mhm.
But really, the one that really mean, which are Praman, the real Praman are these shloks. Vedanta will say these shloks are Arthvada. Okay, the ones that are real Pramans are these other ones. And Vedanta will justify it by saying, and I don't know how Sankhya justifies it, but Vedanta will justify it by saying, if you take the whole thing as a whole, look at all the shloks, look at what do mimamsa, that means do an analysis, and see what could they potentially mean, so that there is one common thing that emerges. That is Vedanta. In fact, Vedanta philosophy is that. Sankhya has not been created by a samanvaya of different shastras, of Upanishads. Sankhya was created by a person in his own speculation and his own understanding. And then he said, there is a relation between what I'm saying and Gita is also saying the same thing. But the two are, he never claims that this Sankhya philosophy has been created out of the Shastras. Vedanta is the only philosophy, Vedanta and Purva Mimamsa, the only two philosophies which claim that we have no other origin other than the synthesis of the Shastra. Vedanta is not the creation of an individual. It's the sar of the Upanishads. It's by people looked at the Upanishads and said, this is what Upanishad is trying to say. As a whole, when I look across everything, this is what makes the most sense. And they made it into a philosophy. Now, Satyam Mithya, for example, is very interesting. There is no use of the word Mithya in Satyam. But Satyam is there, but no Mithya in any Upanishad. And for Vedanta, for Advait Vedanta, there can be no Advait Vedanta without Satyam Mithya. It is the heart of Advait Vedanta. But it doesn't mean that Mithya is not supported by the Upanishad. The Upanishad gives different Upanishad talk about it in a different way. One says, which is the most interesting one, Chandogya, it says, this is Naam only. That everything in this world is for names only. It's just names, nothing more. Another says it's just forms only forms. Now, how do you seem to make sense of it? That it's name only and form only. So what somebody like a Vedanta teacher, say Ved Vyas, what he's done is he said, okay, looking at these sentences, looking at across all of it, let me try to explain it in a way which is systematic. Let me define something called Mithya. That Mithya is something which is name and form only. And it's dependent upon Satyam. When I define it like this, it's easier for me to explain it to others. Remarkably, because actually Satyam Mithya is very hard to explain. But without it, it's even harder to explain the Upanishads. So the philosophy means they made a framework trying to extricate what is in the Upanishads. And given terms, given meanings, given technical terms. Like Ishwar. Ishwar as a word only appears in like one or two Upanishads. Like like the Isha Upanishad it appears. But Saguna Brahman appears. Brahman appears. So Ishwar is nothing but Saguna Brahman. So then they defined Ishwar like that. So with the Vedanta philosophy has tried to look at different Upanishads, look at different terms in different Upanishads, trying to reconcile it, and then create a framework, which then can be easier to explain to people. And then once it's understood, the framework is understood, then the Upanishads are easier to understand. Then then you can see what Upanishad is saying.
So if that happened, a few thousand years ago, is that still happening? Like, are there still terms coming up to make
No,
it
right? No, I mean
more
not
easily
that I know of.
digestible?
No, I mean, it's already,
current
I mean,
age.
people are still doing, like, for example, the person that Akhila and Deepraj have been studying with, Swami Partha Sarthi, he is creating slight changes in the way Shankar taught to make it more palatable. He says, because he's talking a lot to the corporate world, so he's emphasizing different things. He's, I think, I mean, maybe Akila and Deepraj would know better, but he has changed the way that things have been explained a little bit, based on what he feels will be easier to understand. I mean, for sure, Swami Chinmayanand has, right? In fact, actually, I remember this conversation with Carol, and Swami Dayananda has written in his book also.
Yeah.
Swami Dayananda used to be a student of Swami Chinmayanand. He still has, in all his things, he has Swami Chinmayanand's picture there. And he said, I was totally confused because I just couldn't understand. At the end of the day, I thought, because he thought that Swami Chinmayananda is saying that you can only achieve Brahman through Samadhi. So Swami Dayanand said, I did Samadhi till my hair turned gray. Literally, he said, I spent years and years doing Samadhi and I was getting nowhere. And so he spoke actually to another person who was a student of Maharishi, Raman Maharishi. And he said, let's go through. And he said, I spent like 10 or 12 sessions with him because Swamiji already knew Sanskrit. He knew everything about all the Upanishads and all. He said, let me go through the Upanishads again with you. So he took him through the teaching again. And he said that what you have to see here is that Upanishad is not saying anywhere that you have to do Samadhi. It's saying that Upanishad itself is a pramana for Brahman. That means Upanishad is just pointing out the Brahman which already exists. And he said, then Swamiji said, oh, the light shone in his head, the bulb went on. He said, then I reviewed every Upanishad. I saw everything and I could see again and again the same thing being said, which he said I never saw before because of the way I was taught. So now suddenly everything became clear. He said he was on the verge of giving up on Vedanta and going back home, going back to his own, because it was making no sense to him. But suddenly it all made sense. So at the end of the day, it has to make sense to you. In fact, Swami Paramarthananda said the same thing. He said that there are so many different philosophies, so many different ways of looking at things. Eventually, it has to resonate with you. And that's because if it doesn't resonate with you, there is no conviction. Then you're just saying, because that person said so, therefore it is like that. And Swami Dayananda Saraswati was a man of great integrity. He wouldn't, just go along with something if he didn't fully believe it. That's why he achieved what he achieved. Great. I mean, integrity is very important, I think, in philosophy. But sorry.
Yeah, just another basic question.
Yeah.
So here we talk about Purushottam Yoga, and then in the Ramayana, Rama is referred to as the Uttam Purusha.
Yeah, Uttam
Yeah,
Purusha. Right,
Purushottam. Yeah.
Purushottam, right, exactly.
Is it used in the same sense? Because when we generally talk about it, that's not how we interpret it.
Right.
Just-
No. Uttam Purusha, see, Uttam Purusha could mean anything, right? It could mean anything which is good. A person who is very dharmic, who always does the right thing, can also be called Uttam Purusha. So I think when we are talking about Rama as Purushottama, or Uttam Purusha, we're talking about the fact that he is the great king. He always does the right thing. He is just, all of that. This Purushottama is nothing like that. This Purushottama says that I am Purushottam, regardless of whether I am not just. Just and unjust are both supported by me. Good and bad are both supported by me. Ram and Ravan are both supported by me. There is no Ravan without Purushottam. Ravan is also Purushottam. Ram is also Purushottam. Right? That's what he's saying. Because Ravan and Ram are just part of this world. And what makes them different? Maya. It's Maya whose gunas have made one Ram and the other Ravan. If you look at the difference in surface, they're very different. One is good, one is bad. That's only looking at the surface. That's not philosophy. That's morals, right? So from a morality perspective, yes, there's a lot of difference. But if you want to look at it truly as what is going on, the differences are just the traits. Both are human beings. both have consciousness, both are, both are the products of the same Atma. The same Atma is flowing through each, if you want to put it that way, right? So, so the Purushottama is that Atma which flows through everybody, everything in this 15th yoga. That's the difference. But see, it's a good question because depending upon what your own level of maturity is when you're going to Gita, you'll be looking for different things. So there are people who go to the Gita to look for, I want to become a Purushottama, I want to do the right thing. I'm looking to Gita to tell me what's the right thing to do. What should I do, Mr. Bhagavan Krishan? How can I lead a happier life? How can I lead a more beautiful life? What should I do? Gita can address that too. 16, 17, all these chapters which we'll go to next are all about these qualities. Be sattvic, be dharmic. It'll give you that too if you want. Right? So that's there too. And that person will say, yeah, Gita supports me. Gita talks about what I should do in my life. But look at this chapter, look at Purushottama here, and the explanation of Shara and Akshara and everything. And it's not, ultimate teaching of Gita is not whether you should behave in one way or the other. Ultimate teaching of Gita is that you are Purushottam. So all of these things are there. What you get out of it depends on where you are and what you're looking for. And I used to get frustrated by this about Gita, but now I've begun to realize that that is the beauty of Gita. That is why Gita is what it is. Because it's not nothing wrong in wanting guidance. It's just what people want. I may look at thing because I'm a philosopher by nature, by attitude. I like to do all these, think about all these things. Gita will provide me enough fodder to keep me occupied for the rest of my life. Right? It's beyond me. And for a person who is just looking for doing the right thing, it'll provide enough fodder for that person too. That's totally good.
The Kshara and Akshara are the three, the physical, subtle, causal states. All of these are also models, right? For Maya or the Guna, just models, different models.
It's frameworks to think about, but at the end of Vedanta, the end result of Vedanta is for you to understand that you are nothing but Brahman. That's all. All these models are helping you to get there step by step. They're trying to help you, first you have to, like the very fact that there's a Sukshma Sharir is a different model itself. Till we go to the Gita or till we go to Vedanta, we never thought about Sukshma Sharir. We only think about Sharir, physical body, and the mind was a emergent property of the physical body. That's all we knew. Everything was physical. Suddenly, a few years into Vedanta, and you will find physical is only a skin. You started thinking everything is subtle. That all this Sukshma body is going from body to body, and this physical body, which you thought was the entire world, and now suddenly in your own mind has become just a layer of skin on top. Nothing. It's like such a small piece. There's this whole universe which is existing behind the physical body, which was not even conceived by you. That's because of the models, the model of physical, subtle, causal, all these things. Shuru mein you feel something strange, but over time they get into your head and you start looking at things differently. When you start looking at things like that, then thinking about Atma and Brahman and understanding Brahman and Atma becomes much easier. Like if you go to a person who's a Westerner who's never heard about these things, scientist or somebody like that, totally rational, right? Or all you touch is and all you see is all your life will ever be. That kind of a guy, right? Like Pink Floyd song. That person, you tell him about Brahman, like what are you talking about, right? There's no there's no preparation. But all these models serve to prepare you, to ready your mind for you to start thinking differently. Then it becomes easier.
Yeah. But you said for what works for you. So some things you can understand and grasp, like the universe is intelligent, like there is manifest intelligence in the universe at all levels that you can understand. But to say, okay, there is a subtle body and a causal body, either for me or the universe, that is you have that you can sort of have shraddha in it and say, okay, let me follow this model along till the end because maybe it's a stepping stone for me to grasp something bigger. So I can look at it that way. But that's kind of a faith thing, right? Like that is a matter of faith. You can't, there's no, it's not like an evidence-based thing that there's a subtle body or anything like that.
Right. Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
For me, there's no evidence of even the physical body, physical world. There's no real evidence except my perception. But that's a different thing.
Well, then there's no evidence of anybody who's asking the question. Where is the evidence of the mind?
Dheeraj, I have a question. So Maya, right? I mean, there's so much talk about Maya and all that. We've learned quite a bit. So, the earliest definition of Maya is kind of stuck with me, which is its lack of knowledge or ignorance, right? And sum total of all ignorance and right. I mean, that concept have stuck. Is there any other concept?
No, that is a wrong concept. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sorry to be so blunt. That is not the concept of Maya. Maya is not all ignorance. Avidya is ignorance. Maya is all knowledge. That is Maya. Maya is that which creates the world. What creates the world? It's knowledge. So Maya is nothing to be shunned. Maya is the capability or the capacity with which this entire world is created. That is Maya. So what do you need to create?
That's at an Ishwar level, I think.
Right. You're talking about avidya. Avidya is at a personal level. So Maya, when manifested as in an individual, we call it avidya because we say Maya has two properties. One is to project and the other is to conceal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Vikshepa, right? And avarna.
Yeah.
So when I become an individual, as an individual, we say I have avidya, which hides from me the knowledge that I am Brahman. Correct. So yes, so that is also, you can say it's also produced by Maya because anything that you see is produced by Maya. Nothing is produced by Brahman as such. So everything is produced by Maya, so that is also produced by Maya. But what you're going to do, what you're asked to do as a seeker is to remove avidya through knowledge. But all knowledge is Maya. Because the thing to think about it is that everything that is manifested, everything is Maya. Is done so because of Maya. And it's because of knowledge. Just like you have knowledge, when you say, I'm imagining something, and you have a dream, how do you imagine the dream? How do you imagine anything? It's because you have knowledge. It's a thought that you have. Thought means knowledge. It is a piece of knowledge,
Yeah.
piece of information, which is a thought, right? Look at it from a computer science perspective. Anything is a piece of information. So that piece of information that you have, which you can call knowledge,
It can generate. Yeah. Okay.
right? That projects an image for you. So depending on what the piece of information is, that image is projected. So depending on the thought, you project that thought. You have a thought about a lovely golgappa or rasgulla, then you'll project that rasgulla in your mind, right?
Yeah.
It's because you have a thought, a knowledge of rasgulla that you can project the rasgulla. That is Maya. In other words, Maya has the knowledge of this world. That's why the world is projected.
I see.
Right? But avidya is, in its projection, Maya has created these individuals, which is like people like you and me, an individual, who doesn't realize that I am Brahman already.
Hides that. Okay.
That is the avidya, which is also the result of Maya. That avidya has to be removed because it's not that you have to, the task, our task is not to gain Brahman. Our task is to remove avidya, to remove ignorance through knowledge. Because Brahman cannot be gained. if you're not Brahman, you cannot gain
You
Brahman,
cannot, yeah,
right?
I get that.
So you're already Brahman. You just have to remove the ignorance which is in you. You just don't know it. It's like you got your glasses on your head. Sometimes I put my glasses on my head and I'm doing around, and then I'm looking around saying, where are my glasses? I can't find them. I've forgotten they're on my head. And then my wife will come and tell me, what are you doing? So I'll say, I'm looking for my glasses. So she said, they're on your head. So that piece of knowledge that they are in my head has removed the ignorance about my glasses in my mind. Suddenly I say, oh, I always had the glasses. It's not that I now found my glasses, that I never had them and now I have got them. I always had them. That knowledge was covered by ignorance. And the information that my wife gave me, that knowledge that my wife gave me, removed that ignorance. And I realized that I always have classes. Same with Brahman. I always have I've always been Brahman, but I've forgotten. Vedant comes and gives you that information, like my wife did, and tells you are Brahman. And you realize, oh yeah, that's right. It's not an immediate realization because you have to work at it and you have to slowly get to that realization. But then you realize, oh yeah, I always was Brahman. What was I thinking? That's realization.
Yeah, isn't the technical definition of Maya, Yama iti Maya, like that which is not there?
No, well, that is another way to think about it. If you're looking at it from the perspective of Brahman, yes, it is not there. It doesn't exist. Like I said, it depends on how you define
I
existence,
see. I see.
right? Because all that is there is Brahman, so it's not existing. But if you're looking at it from if you're looking at it from the perspective that the world is created, then Maya is what creates the world.
Yeah.
And it never goes away. It can only unmanifest because knowledge, information never goes away. Then I find a very curious parallel between information theory and now they're saying information is the cause of the universe. It's information which is creating this universe. Every bit of things that we see, everything is nothing but information at the end of the day. So I find a very curious correlation between that and Maya. And information cannot be, you can't say what information is. You cannot store information. I mean, you can store it in something, but you can't, it's totally subtle. Like, how do you define information? Right? It can manifest. Information, you can say it manifests in atoms, it manifests in different things. It can arrange things, and because it's arranged things, it manifests. It causes words, so you can say it's manifested itself in the words. But what is that information? That is Maya. I mean, hey, Akhila and Deepraj, even by our own standards of highly conceptual classes, I think this is right up there. So it's not always going to be like this, in case this is causing grief to you guys. This is like I think we just let loose. But this is,
Of course not.
okay,
Why
that's
would
good.
this cause grief? This is a matter of immense joy.
Oh, wow, that's very nice, Deepraj. I'm very happy to hear that. That's good. You're good for Vedanta then.
Dheeraj, I have one additional question about Maya.
Bolo, bolo.
It is just a follow-up. So, one part of Maya is it hides Brahman, right? The other one is it projects the world, right? Is the hiding because of the projection, or they're two, they're not no correlated? Because projection would be, outside, right? The material world or samsara, right?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know whether the hiding is because of is due to projection or whatever. But it is the hiding part which creates samsara.
Mhm.
So, in other words, because you can look at hiding in many different ways. Okay, it does not only does it hide Brahman, right? It actually hides even within Maya, we have
Yeah,
very limited
yeah,
knowledge.
yeah.
We have limited knowledge about the world around us, right? Very infinitesimal small knowledge. So both are hidden. The knowledge of the world and the knowledge that we are Brahman. One is called, I think if you have knowledge of Brahman, right? It's called sarvagya. That's the general knowledge. And to have the knowledge of everything is called sarvavit. That means the knowledge, sarvavid. Vid means the knowledge of the world around us. Ishwar is sarvavid. We are alpavid. We are alpagnya, which Ishwar is sarvagnya. Because we have limited. So knowledge, the Maya does both. And it's only because it does both that this world exists the way that we see it. If we knew all the time that we are Brahman, we would never experience the joys and pleasures of this world in a way, right? The way that we
Yeah.
never go through this experience that we've gone through. Uh, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the like why. I mean, Maya is all I can say is Maya is completely inexplicable.
Which
You
is
just
why it's
know
so
that
hard to get the concept around.
yeah. I mean, you can know that it exists because you can see in your own self that you can dream, that you can project thoughts, you can imagine, you can see that actually happening in you. But you try to understand how that happens. Like, how does it happen? We don't know.
Well, I mean, the way I mean, maybe I have a scientific background, but the more you think about the world, the less you're thinking about Brahman, right?
That's true.
So that's really what I'm kind of debating is I mean, without knowing the where the line is, right? I mean, you can easily start throwing vrittis that are related to the outside world, right? And focus on vrittis that are, related to Brahman, for example, right? Is that what one ought to do?
Right. So basically have a vritti. What you want to do is to have a vritti that that understands the process of vrittis, understanding vrittis.
Yeah.
So the vritti which says there is a consciousness in which these vrittis exist. That also is a vritti to understand that.
Yeah,
That vritti is called Vedanta.
yeah.
Mhm.
A vritti which tells you that, don't be taken in by the subject of the vrittis only. Remember that there's a consciousness in which these vrittis exist. That is just that's if you ask Swami Dayanand, he'll say that is Vedanta. Vedanta is that vritti which reminds you that there is a Brahman in which all this world exists. That vritti is called Vedanta, or consciousness, or Brahman, or ātman, or whatever you want to call it. Which is also vritti, yes.
Yeah.
But then, okay, I think we should.
Well, also the one input I would give the new guys who are working on this is to kind of, you know, get the complexity around, simplify the complexity around Maya because it seems to be a very complex topic. I mean, somebody should go there and get a PhD on that, right?
On Maya. Yeah, they're both well qualified for that PhD. They're youngsters, you know.
Yes. Nil, can I ask that last, the three lines, that just says 15,
Yeah,
is that part, and you said it's at the end of every chapter.
right.
So are those part of the 700 verses
No,
of
no,
the
no,
year? They're not.
no,
Okay.
they're not.
No, I think Vedanta as a whole is quite complicated, quite deep thinking, quite deep understanding. But I think we have to be more on the practical plane rather than the theoretical plane to achieve something, to achieve that level of peace and happiness and contentment. We have to simplify quite a lot of things
Right.
because after understanding all that, if we don't put into the practical plane, we have nothing to gain.
Actually, it's good you brought up. I wanted to tell Akhila and Deepraj also that um, if you look at Gita, I don't know whether you were told this when you were studying Gita. Gita has three shatkams. That means there's three uh, groups of six chapters. The first shatkam, which is the first six chapters, you were told that, right? The first six chapters are about you, are about karam yoga, sannyas. It's like how do you do things. So a lot of what Sanjay is talking about occurs there. So there, Gita talks about how will you improve yourself? How do you have control over your senses? How do you control anger? The importance of Karam Yoga, all of that. So if you just happen to be joining us in the third Shatkam, which is the second Shatkam, by the way, is all about Ishwar, and the third Shatkam is about Tattvam Asi. Third Shatkam is the Asi part, the equality between Ishwar and you. So therefore, it is a lot more conceptual than the first one, which is actually very practical, very much focused on Karam Yoga, and something which obviously is beneficial.
But it is these concepts which needs clarification because we have understood it in a very different way. So when you explain the what is Maya and all that, it's like new. It's
New information. Yeah.
new information. Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah. But then, like Sanjay said, we also have to remember that, you know, we have to, Karam Yoga is very important.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that even the
No, I
understanding
think
of
there
Karam
are
Yoga is
there
different.
are three steps involved.
Right.
First, we have to know the concept. Second, we have to understand the concept. Third is to apply the concept in our lives and bring it to a practical plane. To get the whole of the benefit, to really get deeply attached with that concept, we have to go on to that bridge, to bring the concept into your own lives, to get the benefit out of it.
See, you got to be careful with that though, Sanjay.
Yeah, we
Because
have to be very careful. We have to be very careful and very analytical about
right.
that also.
But bringing the concept to your life is about karma yoga, right? Because there's nothing
Yeah.
about gyan that is bringing, gyan has to be here, right?
See, I mean, I at this late hour, I hate to throw a wrinkle, but I have to. One conversation that Swami Dayanand had with his students, and it's written in all his books and everywhere. He said what confused him was one Guruji, who was also a Vedanta teacher, said that Vedanta is like a cooking recipe, that you have to learn how to cook, but then after having learned the recipe, you have to actually cook. Because till you actually cook, you won't really know what cooking is. And you may be surprised, Sanjay, but that is a wrong way to look at Vedanta. He was trying to tell us that is not what Vedanta is, not like a cooking recipe. See, if you're thinking about to the level, if you're thinking about improving yourself, how can I become a better human being? How can I become better in this world? Then what you're saying is totally right. Because that you can't do that till you do it. Just knowing is not enough. You have to apply it and do Karam Yoga. And that is very good because that's enough for us. If we can do that, that is a very big achievement. Right? I mean, we all know from personal life how difficult it is to discipline ourselves, how difficult it is to gain control over our mind, our anxieties, our insecurities, our anger, right? Those are very difficult things to achieve. But that is a preparatory phase of Vedanta, which for us is a destination, is actually just a preparatory phase. To achieve moksha, which means to achieve that tranquility which Vedanta really promises you, is not a question of doing. It's a question of knowing. It's actually a question of understanding that I am Brahman. See, Sanjay, the way you are looking at it, and I also look at it, and that's nothing wrong in it. We are saying, I am Brahman is a piece of knowledge which is given to me so that I can apply it and become a better human being, so that I can control my anger. But that is a very limited way. Actually, till you control your anger and till you become a better human being, till you have some discipline of mind and can really focus on what Vedanta is saying, you will not realize that you are actually Brahman. And the fact that you are actually Brahman is not a concept which is given to you so that you can apply it in life and become a better human being. It's the truth. It is what really is the truth. And understanding that truth, knowing that, is moksha. So I just wanted to clarify this, not denying what you're saying, because if over the next few years we can just improve ourselves, that'll be great. Wonderful. But
But
that is not
that is what I
Vedanta.
am saying. To reach that truth, we have to take some path, we have to do some karma, we have to change our thought process to
Yes.
reach to that point.
To reach to a point,
You
right?
see?
But all I'm saying is, right now, this knowledge is a means for us to take the karma and reach the point, applying the
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Over time, this knowledge becomes the means to reach moksha.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, otherwise to say that I want to be a Karam yogi is nothing unique to Vedanta. You do Jainism, Buddhism, Christianity, they're all saying the same thing. They're all saying become a better human being, do service, do be unselfish, control your anger. No, no, why would religion? I did a course in Stanford on emotional maturity, a small course. They were saying the same thing. And that course was actually very useful to me, more helpful to me in a way than at that age than Vedanta would have been at that time. But it's the same thing. They're talking about emotional maturity. Understand your emotions, understand why you're getting angry. So there is nothing,
But
that is not Vedanta. That is a preparatory necessary step to Vedanta. What Vedanta is saying, which is unique, is there is one Brahman which underlies this world, and you are that Brahman. Not you will become that Brahman. Not tattvam bhavishyati, tattvam asi. You are that Brahman. That is Vedanta. And we are not going to understand that. We are not, I understand, we are not going to be able to understand the profundity of that statement. It's going to mean nothing much to us right now because we have to do what you are saying. We have to do Karma Yoga. Okay, let's call it a day now.
no,
Okay.
one more question. Is
Okay.
it mandatory to have all this knowledge to reach moksha? A person who doesn't carry all this knowledge, he has no access to the knowledge, can he not reach moksha?
When you say all this knowledge, what do you mean?
Whatever we are learning in
No, there's
Vedanta,
not
the
all this.
concepts and
I told you
everything,
all these concepts are just a framework. This knowledge is not necessary. It's
not necessary.
this concepts are called Gyan Yoga. Why is it called Gyan Yoga? Because you create a concept so that you can travel on the Gyan Yoga. That is not necessary. What Vedanta is saying is all all that is necessary is to know that you already are Brahman. That there
Yeah.
is Brahman and you are already Brahman. That's all is necessary to know. Raman Maharishi knew that. After knowing it, somebody taught him all the Vedanta concepts. He said, okay, now I can see what they make sense. But he didn't need the Vedanta concepts. It's not as if a person who has no access to Vedanta is doomed, can never achieve moksha. Like it's not like that. Not at all. Vedanta is just one. So Swami Dayanand, again, I bring this again. We have to understand this. What I'm saying it again and again. Swami Dayanand says the vṛtti, which tells you just that one little vṛtti, which says you are Brahman. That vṛtti is Vedanta. That is Vedanta. Everything else, all this thing we learn, Ishwar, blood, a subtle body, this body, that body, wo ye, that's all to prepare our mind so that we can understand that vritti. Karam Yoga, prepare your mind so you can understand your vritti. Our purpose is not to improve ourselves in this world. I mean, you may have that purpose right now because that seems like a real thing for you and it's giving you a lot of benefit. Sure, it's my purpose too. I want to improve myself, control my anger, everything. But that's not the purushartha that Vedanta is directing you to.
No, I think that's the first step. I think to go forward, you have to go through that step.
Yeah. Well, you can make all these stories in your mind. The point is, you right now want to do that. You, Sanjay, right now want to have a control over yourself. That's the most important thing. So that for you, that's what you want to do, and that is admirable. That is fantastic. So you will do whatever is needed to get there. Right now, you have access to Vedanta, and me and you and I are talking. You are going this way. Tomorrow, if you have an access to meditation, you will do that too. You will do whatever is necessary to meet your objective, which at this moment is, I want control over myself. That is your objective. And that is perfectly fine. So it doesn't have to be Vedānta's objective. It's your objective. That's good enough. What's the wrong? What's the problem in that? Vedānta is a good enough means to get there. You're already seeing the benefits.
Yeah.
You can already see the change. So nothing wrong. I mean, you can even be like, I see about Janki Santok, the person who Akhila and Deepraj go to, is also doing the same thing in a way. Her focus, I mean, from what I understand, her focus is only on this. She says, she gives you prescriptions. Do this. Take on a goal which is bigger than yourself. Sure. I mean, if you say so, there'll be a bunch of people who would say, yeah, it meets my needs. I will take on a goal which is bigger than myself. Sure. That's not Vedanta. That's a way. That's taking a portion of Vedanta, or it's a way to help a person who has an objective like yours to become a better human being, get to that state. So good. That's great.
I think the reward systems for the two angles are also slightly different, right? I mean, Sanjay, what you're saying is preparation, right? It's a preparatory step for your mind. The moksha part has much sweeter fruit, right? I mean, it's once you reach that particular stage, my understanding is you are free from life and death, and multiple lives, and
You are
so
not
No,
there.
that's true.
but
But I honestly, I really like Sanjay's focus. I mean, although I'm saying all these things, what I'm finding in practical terms is that we go to the other extreme, which is we start talking about all these philosophical things and do nothing. That's a worse situation. So Sanjay can be said, I'm saying Sanjay, he has a limited goal. His goal is not big enough, high enough. But there are people who have very high goals conceptually and do nothing about it. That's even worse. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's it.
So to me, what Sanjay is doing is admirable, honestly, because I can see his focus, consistent focus on all the time on improving himself.
That you should read Deepraj. I think you're saying this is an incorrect assessment of Janki Ji's position
Where is he saying?
in the chat, in the Zoom chat.
Oh, okay. No. I'm so sorry. I actually didn't mean to say. I don't understand Janki Ji's position. I should be very clear about it. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to, make comments which are not correct. Okay. Shall we just call it a day?
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
All right. Chalo. See you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.